Mark, do you want to read the rules for hybrid meeting?
Yes, it's we're opening the meeting at 7:02. And this is Wednesday, June 18th. For a regular financial planning and allocation commission meeting. The rules of this hybrid virtual meeting. Public meeting, the public can attend in person or electronically. The public may view the video recording of the meeting on YouTube at Town of Columbia CT. Please allow 48 hours after the meeting for the video to be published. Public input before the meeting, please email your comments to publicinput@columbiact.gov prior to 24 hours before the meeting. Commissioners and staff will generally remain on mute, except when speaking or voting, and will generally keep their video on themselves throughout the meeting. Remember, of the public visits and audio visual disruption, they may be manually ejected from the meeting upon recommendation of staff or our chair.
Okay, so we'll call the meetings to order at 7:03. And for those who are able, if you can join the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag,
The United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So. The overwhelming audience of citizens may make comments. Seeing none. We'll move on. Okay.
Yell out the window and see if anybody has.
That's my citizens.
You're showing to play taxman by the Beatles.
That's right. Okay, so the minutes of the May 13th meeting were in fact that was mailed to us.
Think before you get to that, I want to introduce them to person.
Okay. Mike is our new member, replacing Jeff Vians. Mike, do you want to tell people just 2 minutes about yourself to your elevator speech?
Sure, I live here in Columbia, of course, on Route 87, right next to the lake, thankfully. I run a nonprofit organization that's been around for going on 5 years now. We're dedicated to cemetery preservation throughout all of New England for the most part. We deal mostly with Connecticut, but we'll travel or anywhere else. We also do genealogical research, tours, education programs. We actually just partnered with the Stonington Middle School to where we now have a curriculum that we will be implementing in their school system for their 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And that starts this fall as well. That with teachers that wanted us to work with them, and long story short, it ended up happening. I never thought it would, and to be in school is a little frightening because I'm 6'10.5" and the kids are tiny and they can build up and take me down if they want, but we have a great time doing what we do. So I run that day operations. I do all of our financials, whether it's state grants, local. And we have partners throughout state and local organizations as well.
Wonderful.
What's your name again?
What's up?
What's your name again?
Mike
Mike.
Carroll.
So we'll get you a name.
Carroll, Carroll.
Okay.
So I just put the request in the agenda.
Yes.
Committee.
So next to you is Judy.
Yeah.
We met. Okay, this is Bev, our finance director, Mark's the town administrator.
Yes,
We
he
know
locked
me.
me out earlier.
Dick Zagda, James Chikolsky, am I saying it right,
Yeah.
James? And you know Art.
Yes.
So, all right, so welcome, thank you. All right, so on to the approval of the minutes. They were in the packet, it's also first in your book, if you would like to, anyone have any questions about the minutes?
Yes, I pointed this out to Jen earlier today. I was pretty aware that you weren't here on May 13th.
So we need to change that.
Yes, I happen to remember that.
Okay. Any other changes? Okay, so is there a motion to approve the minutes amended to list me as absent member?
I moved, we approve the minutes as amended.
Second?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes.
Mike abstained, okay. All right, good. Next order of business is correspondence. So there was a lot of material in the
Yeah.
correspondence. And I think we should spend a little bit of time on it. Mark, would you prefer to present on it, or would you let people, rather have people start with
I'll
questions?
just give you a high level, and then if anybody has in-depth questions, I can answer, I'll try to answer.
Thank you.
So. In a nutshell, the budget we all started with for finances, for revenues from the state, was the governor's budget, which is usually what we go on. By the time this became a real budget of $22 billion, our revenue would increase $163,154. So that's a good upside for the town, and that mainly came in ECS, an increase in ECS. And an increase in town aid road. So those are two big helps. It's a $55 billion budget that was passed, 22 for fiscal year 26 and 23 billion for fiscal year 27. And that's in the capital report we just got today. They still have allowed the state to maintain a budget reserve fund in excess of 4.1 billion. While making significant contributions to pay out the pension and bonded indebtedness. So that's good, they're still on that track to try to actually fund the pensions, which is really what shows the state of Connecticut. If you take that 4.1 billion, that's a 18%. Budget reserve to budget, so that's about where we are. So that's a nice reserve, and hopefully they can maintain that.
That's a good number.
I heard in this explanatory, the veterans property tax exemption, it doesn't quite state what I heard verbally, but I think what we can do, not in this. In this year's taxes, because we're already taxing everybody this year, but a veteran, we can adopt it municipality by municipality to maximize the exemption of 100% disabled veteran to be equal no more than the median value of a house in your town. Because in a lot of towns, some of these 100% disabled veterans were sitting on some of those valuable properties in the town, that their 100% disability did not deter them from having a good financial career. Like in Stonington, I think, it might have been a $4 million home, or, I don't know, I heard some of the numbers that were huge, that they didn't want to take the entire home off the tax roll, because you're 100% disabled. So that's one thing.
So
we
the
have to
old
consider.
rule was that you could give them 0, and now.
Well, the old rule was that the federal government through the VA gave you your veterans. Your income that you got as a 100% disabled veteran came from the federal government. Because it happened while you were in the army or the Navy or the Air Force. So, but the legislation didn't understand, they ran incorrect numbers as to how many 100% disabled vets all the towns had, and they very underestimated it. And there were no income qualifiers in the legislation. So they worked on it, it's still not perfect, but it's a little better. Another thing, town aid and road, what we're worried about is that this new bill, this 5002, House Bill 5002. That we're worried that it's a new bill towards affordable housing, and I don't totally understand it yet, but it's a mandatory, like 25% of what it has to be affordable. I'm not sure how they're coming up with those numbers and forcing them top down onto the towns. But they're talking about reducing some of our grants if we don't qualify for that, or like might not be able to get a steep grant. So it has a lot of concerns, and I don't know if the governor decided yet whether he's vetoing it. My guess is, from what I'm hearing, he won't veto it, but get a promise from the legislation that they'll come back into session and fix some of the things in that bill and not make them as onerous as they are right now. And it says here through CCM that they agree that Connecticut must expand affordable housing. It's the letter we wrote to the legislation and the governor. However, members conclude that House Bill 502 takes a top-down approach that ignores local infrastructure, planning, and community input. So it was very contentious. And then, they also, as you go back into this, into the CCM bill update, you'll see a whole Excel file of every bill that either passed or failed. The horrifying thing is how many bills fail. And some of them, if they actually passed, would be, like, one of them highlighted here was the leaf blower ban. Prohibit municipalities from purchasing gas-powered leaf blowers. So they were gonna just wipe out gas-powered leaf blowers.
I agree, that shit, one of the worst pollutants of anything worse than cars.
Problem is, you actually need them. So, we're used to using them, but anyway. And I don't think the electric power leaf blowers are quite good.
No, they don't do it.
So, there were a few good bills that they passed, the workers' comp, the Gardner decision fixed, where the language of it went through the Supreme Court, the Gardner bill, or the Gardner case. And it would allow you, while you're on 100% disability, to actually make more and incentivize you not to come back. They fixed that language and they had to give some other things by allowing you to they added new body parts that would count towards disability requirements. So they labor got a boost, but the municipalities mainly were concerned with workers' comp being overrun.
Are these bills that made it out of committee or are these just all?
These are all bills are made out of committee and then either passed or failed at the legislature.
Some committee thought those were good ideas.
Right.
Just, I don't know, what is CCM, what's an acronym?
Okay, so that is Connecticut Council of Municipalities, and they represent all the towns and cities that are lobbyists. And they said this was the most trying legislative session they've ever had. Because the labor really was aggressive in this legislative. And they were not listening to anyone, they were driving forward to improve. Like, I can hear still, if the governor vetoed, they were gonna set up a state pool of money to compensate striking workers when they went past their wages. And the governor, I hope he vetoes it.
He
because
said it was.
He said,
You said it's gonna be, yeah.
so that's just not, I don't think what the government's role is, supporting striking. Or actually what it would do, would allow it to come a longer negotiation than.
Exactly.
But I think at the moment, they keep thinking it's helping us by keeping ECS and everything flat, do no harm. But we haven't had an inflation adjustment in as long as I've been.
Couple of years.
No, I think it was bad.
We've got, no, inflation, yeah, but the grant has increased a little bit.
You've seen it in this? Okay. But the requirements on the town and cities.
Yeah.
And I know the health district, they had cut the health district statewide, and how much they give a health district, but they also cut the lead requirements for mandatory paint analysis of paint structures. They cut the allowable amount of lead in half, which quadrupled the amount of cases the health district has to investigate now. And that, like, tore apart how much time their employees had to do their normal jobs. So now it's consuming us in lead analysis instead of environmental analysis like water and sewer and wells and everything else for sanitation and restaurant inspections and everything else that the health district does. So that, yeah, they love to pass a bill and not have any revenue. I'll take that.
Yeah, unfunded mandate, that's
Yeah.
right. It should be the motto on the
Yeah,
flag.
yeah.
Whatever something sustains.
So I'll take any other questions anybody has.
Do you know if they passed, I see something in here about the air quality improvement in schools, did that bill that they're always worried about pass?
I didn't hear if they actually are mandating anything more.
Didn't hear anything about like air quality, anything.
I didn't either. I didn't even hear that being discussed.
Alright. Great, thank you. Does
Well,
anybody have specific questions about any of the legislation or how it impacts the town?
or feel free to email myself and copy that. And hopefully answer that.
Somebody might wanna explain educational cost sharing for.
Oh, yeah.
For my,
My,
not everything, because
You want to take a stab at what the school uses for that?
ECS grant, well, it comes through towns. And so basically we use that money as part of their appropriation, and it's all, school, or the school. You know, they get what they get, basically, and then the town funds their funds, so. And it's usually basically cover the regular education costs, they also get a special ed grant, which is based on costs above a certain threshold that the state have. And so the school has to come every year and report into the system and estimate of certain kids that are highest costs, and then the state will reimburse. I think the threshold now is like $86,000, and then maybe they'll give about. I don't know if it's like 4% above that or something, it's not a lot, so. Of course, our costs have come down,
well,
at least below the excess costs, so there's still costs,
but in a $14 million school budget, how much do we get from the state between those two grants?
well, the ECS is usually 2.3 million, so the special ed grant. It varies depending on the cost, it's about 50, 75,000. No. Or we got a little less, but then we're got some of them. It's probably 50, but then with between the other grants they get, it's about $200,000 to $300,000. Town pays for the rest of it.
Yeah, so we get bucks from the state, really.
And the pilot didn't go up, we keep asking for an increase in the percentage towards what the state deems as non-taxable properties. That's, but they pretend they're giving a great deal, that they are to nonprofits, but then they. Towns and municipalities have to run on property tax, and then we don't get the true contribution that they promised back from the highway, payment in lieu of taxes. So cities like Bridgeport, which half of Bridgeport is nonprofit.
Right.
Have trouble functioning.
So the church doesn't pay tax, so, you know, the hospital wouldn't pay
But
tax.
everyone uses ambulance and fire and police and all of our services. But they're not paying for them.
So,
Here's the labor bill that I can't find the labor bill.
That was then, if you look. You look in the capital report. The capital report is cost. No, it was in the CCM bill update. And that was under. That was House Bill 683, which was a workman's comp. 686.
Page 5.
Like.
last one, page 5.
No, the one about the one about being able to protest or
Oh, I don't know where that is. Cause I couldn't find it in all the literature that they sent out for the special revenue fund for striking workers.
yeah, I was going over.
Yeah, I don't know where that, what bill that was that created that, unless it was outside of.
Some reason I didn't know if it, I was kind of surprised when I said it passed, I didn't think it did pass.
It did pass and he threatened to.
That's the last.
I thought he
it
threatened to
passed.
veto it passed, but I didn't think it passed.
I thought that.
Oh, okay, and maybe that's why I haven't been hearing that, maybe it did not pass.
And that's what I was trying to remember, I was. When you said it passed, was the last, I was listening to
But
the.
it may also not be considered a CCM, one that CCM tracks.
Oh.
Although they should.
I was
Yeah.
just curious.
They also, in their bonding revenue package, which was House Bill 7288 on page 16. They adopted bonding and grant allocations for the biennium to include but not limited to air quality improvement. Consolidating several earmarks into a single fund that allows funds to be used for additional projects such as repairing fire damage and correcting safety violations. So they've expanded air quality grants to include fire and safety violation improvements. So they're still providing grant applications. But it doesn't, I couldn't find anything about it in the manual as a must do. And they did create a new MERS, which is the Connecticut Municipal Employee Retirement System. They created a MERS 2.0. You'll see that on page 17. And it's about time because MERS, I think towns were contributing over 20% of those MERS and the employees were contributing over 2%. So it wasn't a fair, the employees weren't pitching in enough towards their retirement. It was all dumped on the cities and towns. So MERS 2 is much more equitable. And I don't have the details of MERS 2, but I heard a presentation that sounded much better, towns and cities.
So they failed the property tax, mortgage property tax then? Eliminating it, so they're not,
What failed was, I heard what failed was a statewide adjustment.
phase out eliminates property tax and motor vehicles toward the dedication of certain revenue from the state income tax and this. Reimbursements probably based on a per capita, so they're not reimbursing the town. So it looks like,
Oh, that was where they were making the towns whole for the loss of property tax of the cars. I think they're fading away from that. That was always our fear. We'd be stuck with the difference.
I think we're okay, but.
I have a question, so, I know I'm new obviously here, I follow politics quite a bit, my wife can attest to that. The bruises on my shoulder can attest to that. But when it comes to the as of right commercial to residents, I know that's part of the bill 5002, if I'm not mistaken. And it talks about, being able to, and that passed on here, it says, being able to convert,
Commercial
commercial to residential without having to go through planning and zoning.
Right.
So how does that affect a town like ours financially? When we don't, like, we had talked earlier, we don't really have the infrastructure for these large residential buildings.
Well, what
And
the
that-
legislation does
I
understand
planning and zoning as well.
is that it still has to go through a health department. So you can't make a commercial property into a 40 apartment complex without a sewer. I don't think you could build, it'd be hard to build a septic system big enough to handle a major apartment building. Unless you have the most incredible sandy soils. I know in Essex, they just built one without sewer, 50 units, but that was on a giant sand pit. So it's a concern, because now they're saying that a builder could buy a commercial property and make.
And then they don't need dedicated parking either, was part of that
Right,
as
there was
well.
no minimum parking requirements. Which is a big problem, because eventually. To put 50 units in, you better have at least 50 cars available plus guests.
So let's say it passes, what happens?
Well, it did pass. What the governor's trying to do is fix some
Well, if
things.
it passes the governor though.
Right, then we'll have to fight it again next year. Now, luckily. For Columbia, there's not a giant desire of builders to build apartment complexes.
On ledge.
But they could
Unless
take
you're
over,
on the
they
highway.
could take over vacant properties, not
Could.
that there is many, but they could. So,
Right, so we'd rather go through a planning zone. Review. But they still would have to go through health district. Would have to make sense. Cause you can't just plug into a sewer system. But Hebron might not be impressed if they lost a big chunk of their commercial Main Street, and all of a sudden it was. Housing instead of the new.
So I was reading this one on early education. That's requiring additional spaces around the state and zero cost for any family making less than 100,000, is that gonna impact?
I don't know, I haven't heard,
So this for preschool,
Barbara,
That's what it says, yeah.
so.
is that? Cause usually that's an allotment, right?
So there's usually a lottery, but
Lottery.
there's no cost if it's a identified student. But if it's a regular ed student, they're charged, so.
Yeah, but it looks like they're saying in this new bill that just passed.
So it could impact. Collecting, and there's also an affordability thing, if there's people who can't afford it, they're. Given like through a sliding scale kind of thing, they figure out, the tuition on a lower cost base for certain students, so. But that's something that I would think they're gonna be looking at.
Oh, yeah, free or no more than 7% of your income. I did read that. They have 300 million allotted towards that.
Yeah, so I don't know how they've looked at, like, how far they've gotten into looking at that, but.
I would imagine that would mostly be channeled towards the cities.
Well, particularly since the Head Start funding is in question right now.
Is it?
Yeah. That's hard getting an update on that.
Right, well, others? On this, any other questions? On the correspondence, including any of the other, board reports, there been in here for. Board of Selectmen meetings, any comments on those? Questions? Okay. Moving on to the HVAC, project update. For the school.
Going fast.
They picked up momentum, I think, this week now that school's out, there's
Right.
definitely more. They're also. Remember the oil tank replacement? So there's a giant hole in front of the school right now. So the oil tank hopefully will be in, I'm not sure when the end date is, but they have dug a huge hole. To get that full tank out, if you know, and so between that and the HVAC, the school is kind of busy with the contractors right now, so. They are starting to move along, so. I think a lot of the ceiling tiles are down now, so all the.
Right, fire marshal authorized all the ceilings come down, so you get a good look at everything, sure there's no surprises.
And they're starting in the A wing, and I think there's some going back and forth with Eversource about the part.
About the transformer, whether the mechanical engineer saying that the size that it is right now is fine, and the Eversource is saying, no, you need a bigger transformer, which might mean we want to dig up a line from the street to our parking lot to the back of the school to replace put in more electrical conduit for bigger. So we're trying to get that decided quickly before we lose the summer.
Especially because, need to know because, that means town hall will be on generator guard for a day or two. And support the parking, it does a generator support full air conditioning.
It does.
That big thing out there, yeah. It should, but, yeah. They're still targeting to try to get as much done before school starts right after Labor Day, so. Okay.
Any questions on that? Okay, update on the roads and culverts.
We just went out to bid on our next big project that you would authorize. We put together funding and we're waiting to see if the state will authorize using. Those are funds towards the old Willimantic and Chesborough Bridge Road culverts. We want to replace them with slip liners, which is another plastic giant pipe that goes in, gets mortared in and reinforces the old rusting culvert. So we just put that out to bid. And we're waiting for the results and we're waiting for the state to see if they'll fund it. Doubleday is still being designed. Right now, all the surveying is done and we're waiting for the actual concept of what they think the solution will be. And then, we haven't gotten our final bid specs for Pine Street yet, so we can go out bid on that. And we're waiting, and we're designing, also.
Johnson.
Thompson Hill's being designed too. So all those projects hopefully will come together and in the next 2 to 3 years, we might. Sooner than now, looking for a bond authorization from the town, but facing another bond.
All right. So update on the financing.
Good news, thanks to the team of Beverly and your committee or selectmen and the town helping us get through all this. We achieved the highest rating for town our size. So I sent that out earlier. So we got the AA plus. And we
Very
also,
impressive.
we got the band rating of SP 1 plus. I don't know what that exactly means. but
That's what I was gonna ask, so what does that exactly mean?
It's the highest we can get. Which I think is why we closed at such a low interest rate.
It's called, they feel we're strong enough to pay our bills that, you know, people. Ability by bond.
We're a very stable, safe company, town to purchase a bond fund. And we locked in at 3.17, and I talked to other town managers that were, they were up more towards 4 and over 4.
It's great.
So we killed it.
So did you brag at the CCM?
I did, so I liked it 3.7. I think South Windsor was up above 4. But it, they said our policy was great. So that helped. They did have some comments on it that we should fix before we bond again.
That's like the next.
Yeah, so I'll let Beverly touch some of the thoughts that we got feedback on. And, the interview process went great. Bev and I, along with our municipal advisor, Bill Lindsay, actually, it wasn't Bill.
No.
Yeah, Bill was there for the
And he had,
presentation.
he had a little intern, or an intern in there, so.
Yeah, Bill's there for presentation, and then for the bond opening bidding, it was his partner Mark. But, we all presented and asked us a lot of questions and went well.
Great, that's great. Good job. Okay, so the updates on the financial policy that we voted to approve at our last meeting.
Yeah, so the one we approved back in April, basically, our discussion with Standard and Poor's and stuff, unfortunately, they saw that we have a trend of a very strong fund balance. There is some concerns about the wording in the financial policy, with more shown from the financial advisor, so. Marker and I are gonna work with them. We're gonna probably up the limit from 13 to 18, maybe to 15 to 20. Because 15 is pretty much what they look for as a minimum.
Okay.
They want a healthy fund balance and they wanna see a trend, and unfortunately, we trended. It was explained that this was a fairly recent, we just basically. Documented our policies and stuff, so they understood that. But, you know, they didn't make full comment, but it's recommended by the financial advisor to maybe do an update. So Mark and I worked on the wording and all that kind of stuff. And there was another clause that, the financial advisor mentioned to come in. I think it has to do with post issuance of, debt. There's certain other policies that need to be added to it. It's not something that everybody said it would look better to strengthen the policy. Of course, we can't remember quite what it was, because we're like, what? In the middle of everything, so, I think it has to do with the debt policy, so it was minor, but it just try to just update and solidify it a little better to kind of get it all more standardized, so. Other than that, we should let the town who stole it from know.
Yeah, no.
I think they all, I'm not sure if we had the wording clear enough. They also want to, if we go over 20, that we're gonna use the excess towards, capital projects. not,
one time,
one-time projects not operating.
yes, not necessarily capital, but there might be something here, like all of a sudden, like, you know. Something occurs that we need to do a one-time thing, so, yeah, we just have to just modify that, and we'll get the word out. Oh, I thought we said that, it's talking. I think it's sort of in there, but it's like, I think more it was talking about. Towards the mill rate and all that kind of stuff, and I think we had some wording about one-time purchases, but I think they want. Just a little more clarification on that, so. Yeah, so we'll work on that and get that to you. In our spare time.
Okay, so, any other questions about that? Just stand by on that issue.
Right.
Next meeting. So an update of the 24-25 budget, is that what this?
So this is kind of like, just a rough draft, we don't, it was cast in stone, it's not audited, we don't have final numbers, it's just a preliminary. It kind of gives an estimate somewhat of the revenues and the expenditure surplus, between the revenues about 94,000. The Board of Selectmen general fund is about 543, and the Board of Ed 338. Now, that's the number I gave the Board of Ed a couple weeks ago. So I didn't want to update numbers without letting them know, so, that's a number, but, I'll update that and let everybody know as it goes when they get updated, but. We still have on both sides a lot of year-end spending and closeouts and all that, so. Right now, it's about 975, again, that could go up, that could go down, depending on how the rest of the year goes. I made sure I put the adjustments in for the 2 general fund transfer we did, 499,000 for the HVAC and 263 for the culvert that we're out to bid with. As you know, when we passed the budget, we're reducing that 499 and putting back 200 back in, or really reallocated to cover capital, but. So that I'm aware of that, so basically at the end of the year, I'm looking at, basically an undesignated fund balance. Excluding. Things that are considered non-spendable or encumbrances, or just year-end purchase orders. About 3.7 million, which is still about 18% to the requirement, which is we're still in good shape. I think during the budget, it came down to about 18% anyway, 18.5, so.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in line with that, so, which is still good, and even in the budget, the Board of Ed, I think I put in 300 or 100, so. 100 is a little addition, so again, these numbers are gonna change, but I just figured, just give you a preliminary. To see that we're still in good shape for the year, despite all the additional maintenance and unanticipated. Changes in adding staff and staff changes and other stuff, we've been managing to. Take care of everything within budget without touching the general fund to cover operating. So we're in good shape, the revenues came in, we have got the steep grant. And that's basically offsetting the LoCIP that we're not submitting this year, plus the, property tax revenues came in, definitely over 95% or something, we haven't gotten those final numbers yet. And I know the collection agent reviews, we've been able to recover some money that we weren't sure we were gonna get, so.
It's over 60 times.
Yeah, we got about $60,000 through the collection, so. They've been able to get some money in, so, overall, I think we're doing good, and just like the Standard & Poor's, we explained, we're kind of on the conservative side, and. It definitely sound like they appreciated hearing that, so. That we just don't go and, okay, let's go on spending spree and figure everything out, but yeah, despite all definitely this year's been quite the busy year, with some unanticipated costs, and. If we have a few more that I'll show up to. That we're still able to cover everything with the budget that passed, so. It's kind of good, so, but again, this is totally preliminary. And I think you all finally have the final hard copy audit report. There was a struggle with this, and we understand the hard copy, I thought they did, and it's, enjoy reading that, it's very enticing. You read it when you're in the 18th RO.
in terms of the Board of Education, you've estimated that the return will be 338, but
That's already changed.
oh, yeah, it's way down.
It's
Because
probably
they-
gonna, it's probably gonna, it may come down, it depends, there's some encumbrances that are not in there yet, and I have to close out payroll and all that kind of stuff, so. But that's the last number they got, so.
Right, but there also, I think we saw Jen sent out the Board of Education minutes and there was discussion about, since they have so much left over, they're gonna buy uniforms and stuff. So they're gonna spend the money.
It's
Not-
our agreement. It's not a hard, it's not like $50,000, I mean, I think it might be. They're replacing, I can't think the original name today. It could be about 10, but they're doing multiple sports.
Right,
There are some cafeteria tables, they wanna replace those, you know, it could be another 10. There was, this, if you read the minutes, unfortunately, because of statute, the Board of Ed has to pay for unpaid school lunches. And for the 23-24,
Meaning the parents don't
yes,
pay that bill.
so some of that is already in this number, so for the 23-24 year, East Con said you have to pay it, we tried to collect, it's about a little over $11,000. And I asked them to go back and say, is this from the year prior to that, cause that's not right, for you to come after us 2 years for it, but no, they confirmed, we have parents who will not pay. We just got the bill for this school year, and it's about $6,500.
Is that high school all the way? through?
No,
Just 8th grade and
K-8.
So they didn't,
So, the school has no recourse. We've looked into it, they have been sending, the East kind of sent out multiple reminders, the school is sending out, saying, please pay your bill. Unfortunately, there's some kids, you know, the families move and they don't pay. Or they just don't pay, period, and there's no recourse on it, because you can't hold back report cards. You can't say you can't go to activities, you can't give them like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, they have to be given the same lunch as everybody else. They're trying to be, figure a way to be more stringent, I think East Con may get more aggressive, but right now. Letters are going out to all families, at least for this school year, that you have to pay the Board of Ed back. There was a notification saying that unfortunately, because of parents, we'll say almost $20,000 was paid for non-educational costs because parents don't pay their lunch, so they sent a notification out to parents, and those parents, some of those parents still didn't pay. There's families who owe up to almost $1,000. And
but isn't that
that still doesn't
more or less the
explain
state
the,
has a free lunch? I mean, why is the state reimbursing us for that?
because the kids, the only time that is done is when a parent fills out the free and reduced lunch application has been accepted. So a bunch of these families have been offered, it's been sent the forms and they don't fill them out.
And we can't call the parents into the office and say, stand here while you complete this form.
Now you can't force them. They have to provide income information and all that too,
But then how can we have to feed their kids if they're not?
statutorily, we have the state mandate, you know, no kids shall be hungry in school. I agree with that, breakfast and lunch.
But you don't have to give it to because then the rule is that no child has to pay for lunch. Because if every single child showed up and not a single one, every one of them said, I'm not giving you any money, then we would have to pay everybody's lunch.
Unfortunately, during COVID, when the state was paying everybody's lunches, a lot of people got used to that. So when they mandated again, you have to start paying, you know, parents just continued, and I'd say you kind of did make an effort there. I'd say some of it, I would say falls on them, because I think for a while there was some. Not sure if they had their things all put together, there's been a turnover, so now there's a new business manager who's trying to fix things from the past. But unfortunately, there is a clause that if there's a balance at the end of the year, the Board of Eds have to pay for that, those costs. That every year they have to start with a zero balance.
And we can't just make our own lunches, we have to use them.
Either way, even if we had it in-house. If the lunch balance continues, we still have to feed those kids. There's no choice in the matter. Oh, Barb's looked at, she's talked to the town attorney, her attorney, talked to other superintendents. There's not much we can do. If it's a lower balance, that's a good sign, it's a lower balance, but. And we have the funds to do it, but there's no choice in the matter. You know, I suggested maybe a collection agent, but I think there's parameters on that.
Cool. What if we posted on the school cafeteria board all the unpaid balances?
I think that's the point, they don't want to ostracize.
You really can't, you can't humiliate the children.
Can't do that on
It's on the parents' names.
Well, everybody's gonna know who it is.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's, there's a little bit of privacy, here when it comes to school.
That would be. I was thinking like DRS had the top 100 tax bills and it's public information, all the costs.
Yep. It is.
Yeah, people don't pay their property taxes, it's public.
In the schools, you teach responsibility and how to do things correctly, and then the parents don't have to follow it.
It's not a lot.
Oh,
It's kind of sad, but you know,
How many is $11,000 worth of food bill? That's a percentage of it.
unfortunately, some of it is you have some families with very, very high bills, but then there's kids who owe as much as 50 cents, so that, you know, but. But there's just a few that are quite high.
Is there an average though, like a per student average?
I don't think I didn't look at it yet, but you know, I just got a list the other day and I was just.
I don't think.
In the
Yeah.
grand scheme of.
I would say the top 20 is.
This isn't.
Uniforms that they're paying for.
This isn't that big of a
It's
deal.
not a
There
giant.
used to be.
Yeah,
Um,
I just don't understand why they wanna be
But
mad.
it's just one more dollar on top
It
of
just seems like,
$10,000
you know,
dollars
it's.
every day that we have to drive
Down
down.
the road, the more people get used to not paying.
Oh, yeah, that's what happened,
Yeah.
so unfortunately, we're hoping now it's better. I think they've had more discussions with these guys, and so hopefully next year will be a big improvement.
Yeah.
I will say between the year, you can see it's a big, little over $5,000 difference, so that's.
Yeah.
And they have been ramping up notifications to parents and all that kind of stuff, so. We'll see what happens, I think when kids buy lunches, there's gonna be, some parents are gonna come around saying, my kids didn't charge me. Yes, they did, but now that, you know, I think they're gonna do some more changes in that. When kids buy lunch, how they're, you know. A little more.
Yeah, I mean, that is the problem, the kids didn't have permission from their parents and they bought anyway.
Well, kids will do. You know, I kids, they don't like my parents left, I'm just gonna throw it away. Sorry.
Could you link it like power school, so like the balance is just. So when parents check grades, they
So
see,
they have an online account. They can log in anytime and see their balances, it's all set up. They also get notifications by email.
But I think this is the most important thing we should talk. Right, but this is also diverting from my more fundamental point is that yet again, they've decided to spend their money on unbudgeted items. Instead of returning it to the town, and not all of it, I grant you, but there's still a significant, I think it was about 100,000. That they were gonna spend of the. Excess money that
wasn't
they had.
ever gonna do that.
yeah,
I don't, right now, I can't see it totaling more than 100,000, it's less than that, yeah. There were some things, I think, but they just, you know, they're returning most of it, so. Like I say, you
It's
can't.
next month what it is.
Right,
says most of it, this is substantially less than what she said you were gonna return.
well, the budget document was 100,000, you're getting over about 200 right, more right now, so. There hasn't been, I mean. From what I've seen and what I've gotten, I haven't seen rampant spending, like. There's things like uniforms, I mean, that's. They were shot, they were just bad shape, I mean, it's not like they're just buying things just to buy things, so.
This should be, fully disclosed in the budget process, so we know what's happening, and it just. Once again, feels like you're doing an end run.
That's what, one of the things that Barbara has done, and I tried to talk with her about this in the context of the meeting, so we do it often. She says we wanted X, Y, Z, but we didn't ask for that, and it's like it's like, because she wanted something she didn't ask for, she saved all this money. But, you know, that's like, you know, you go in and you buy something that's on sale, not because you need it, just because, you know, it's
It's on
cheap.
sale, right.
You know, it's not logical at all. It's like, you know, I really wanted 3 million for the school because I had all these things I wanted to buy, but I'm only gonna ask you for.
Right,
You know,
so you have a million.
right. And so it's the way she thinks about it, and actually there was a mistake in her numbers that she never fixed, because the way she said it was $19,000, which is a whole lot, but,
Oh, capital,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I talked to her about that, yeah.
Yeah, because I had said it to her in the meeting, but I don't think she got it, so. So, and that's relevant, because when she does that, she takes those things out, then we don't know. And, you know, she might mention it, but then it's gone. And if she knows she needs uniforms, and she knows she needs cafeteria tables, I would rather hear about it in the formation of the, you know, as the numbers are being put together. And understand that if they do end up with extra special ed money or whatever it turns out to be, that, you know, that's something, because I'm sure they have a lot of needs, and she may be prioritizing.
Well, they
Yeah,
always,
things that are worse.
like in the town, if there's money at the end of the year, there's a wish list, there's certain things and.
Right, the town is
I mean,
different.
The
The town is
uniforms
different
is
than us.
something that they didn't budget for, but they had the funds, so they decided to get them this year, same thing with the tables and stuff.
But, and if those things have to come before FiPAC to be approved for,
Okay.
if you're transferring from one budget line to another.
Not
If
for
it's
that.
within the same budget line.
Not on the Board of Ed, they're.
No, that's what I
No,
mean.
it's just saying, you
I'm saying
guys do
it's
it.
town, we
Oh,
get
it's
to
town.
see it, and if we think it's inappropriate, we can say no to the transfer request.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially the Board of Ed is the bottom line.
yeah, but that's why we have worked so hard over the past 2 years to try to convince them to be more accurate in their estimates. So that there isn't a lot left over at the end, and we've always been a little concerned that there's a little bit of fluff in a lot of the numbers. That's because it doesn't always come back. If it always came back, it would be no problem, but it doesn't always come back. They find something else to spend it on. I think that's always been my concern for the last couple of years, and I think I've heard it from other members of the committee.
And it wasn't, because many of us here were on the committee when it wasn't that way.
That's right.
So, yeah.
So anyways, that's just, I'm expressing the concern. We'll know more when we see it, the numbers next month, because then they'll be final, right? The July numbers, no, August.
Maybe not till September.
September, okay, well, we'll know at some point. So, okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, so let's move on to the new business, the only, item of which is a application for tax and business incentive program in Columbia. Want to talk about that, Mark?
Sure, so this is a new tax incentive program that the town passed to encourage commercial investment in Columbia as opposed to Hebron, Romantic, Lebanon, or wherever they might want to go. So we wanna give a benefit to making an investment in our town, and we space it out over 7 years with a reducing percent that they'll pay in towards their commercial tax. And Wiles Hyundai has applied for that big addition when they brought Hyundai into Wiles. And this has already been approved by EDC and the Board of Selectmen. The next step is through FiPAC. And then it would go back to the Board of Selectmen to set a town meeting, because the ultimate vote has to be at a town meeting by law. And if you look, the assessor showed what the assessed value is, and then the abated value that would, and what the tax value would be. So year one and this is just on the addition, not the entire property. So she's showing that the $554,000 addition would be abated based on the first year 80% and it's 443 and tax, so the 80% tax amount would be 110.
So in year one, we're giving up 443,000 of revenue, in
Not
year
revenue,
two.
Assess that.
assessed value.
Oh, assessed value, oh, okay, oh, all right.
So you'll tax on the value for just the addition, the additional
The addition
Growth
would be,
of
the
that
tax
property.
110.
110.
Okay, and what is the ultimate tax cost?
I don't have the dollar amount.
Well, you can only base it on the current mill rate, so I don't know what it's gonna be in the next 3, 4, 8 years. Right. That's all based on mill rate.
It's 20, the current mill rate going into this year is like
29.
29
By
points.
one.
29.1. So yeah, that's what we want to see what we get off. And then the next one to come before us will be the Kia dealership. at Columbus. And also Mean Moose. Well, it's not actually Mean Moose, it's Steve Arrington, the new, but he bought the old flooring, Nisha flooring.
Okay.
Big investment on that.
So what they have done is they've made the investment, it improved the value, and now they're asking for an abatement on the approved value under this program over a period of 7 years.
Right.
Under this criteria, okay.
Correct.
And more are coming. Which
Yes.
I think, I mean, I fully support the program. I don't feel like this application is sufficient to meet the criteria set forth in the statute. It talks about the project has to show clear economic benefit to Columbia. And the applicant should submit in writing the list of benefits such as new jobs, growth in the town grant list to be realized by Columbia if the applicant receives tax incentives under the program.
Would you like me to make that request
Yeah.
for the town meeting? Or bump it back to have more information for your next 5
Well, are we gonna do one meeting for, I mean, cause town meetings cost something to.
No, town meeting's
Oh,
not
really? Just illegal and.
illegal
you know,
costs.
I don't have a moderator for those.
They don't.
Don't
They're
you?
free.
So we're gonna do 3 different meetings.
We've already done the EDC and the board of selectmen and
No,
then,
but I mean town meetings, cause there's 3 applicants coming down the pipe. Should we try to lump them all into one?
People aren't gonna come.
I don't know
They'll
how,
come anyway.
I don't know how long it taken to
Yeah, that's
actually apply, they haven't even applied it. I just know of big projects that we're about.
I would recommend fixing the application because it says briefly describe. I think it needs to be a little bit more detailed to show what the benefits are.
Okay.
Like, how many jobs, over how many years? At least a good faith estimate. Jobs. And I leave it up to the committee whether we approve it with the expectation that that will be provided before the town meeting, or if we defer approving this, I don't know. Is their next, is this gonna impact their July payment, or would it be the 2026 payments?
She's saying
In year 1.
year 1, but it doesn't say when.
What year?
it starts.
But the work's
Probably
already
fiscal
done.
year, right?
You'd think that they're on the
Done, yeah.
grant list, so they could.
So it would probably be starting July 1, I would think. But they've already done the bills, so they would probably have to recalculate their bill. Cause the bills are in process.
Right, the bills are about to go out. They're going out at like next week.
So they would probably make an adjustment, a supplemental adjustment, it passes in for the January payment.
So they'll be, because this hasn't been approved yet, they'll be charged at their,
Probably their fault.
What, is this, would this, all right, here's the next question, since we're having this, is this going, would this be approved, would that impact the thing anyways? Cause I doubt there's gonna be a town meeting for this to be voted on before July 1.
No, we would
I
have,
would think that this would impact their January payment, cause there's 2 payments. I
Right.
would think, they would
You
probably.
said the bills are about to go out.
if
Right,
the
that's
bills,
just-
this doesn't pass, so
It
the
says
bill
that's what's not in there.
would be whatever the assessor assessed the increase.
I
to.
know, before they got the credit.
Yeah, at best, so they'll just adjust the January and then going forward every.
I assume,
thing, but.
not the assessment.
So there isn't necessarily an urgency to pass it tonight, but.
Right.
You know, it's already passed the other 2 boards, so. Is there, what do people generally feel? Would you like to see more detail on these if we're going to be giving abatements, which I do think are fantastic, but I would
Yeah.
like to see a little bit more detail.
You don't know, like
How
the
to
question, the
benefit.
question 8 answer?
Yeah. That's my biggest.
I don't know how better branding, is it branding?
It's really helped Columbia, it helps them.
Right,
Yeah.
but then I think people don't know what the possible
Well,
answers are,
right.
you know, if you want a form filled out correctly, you need to give people a little bit of
Like the
instruction.
first one, right? So-
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, so they
that's
know
fine.
what could go
Yeah.
on those lines even, and that.
So certainly, talking about, okay, you build 3 more widget machines, you're gonna hire 4 more people to man those, something like that, is a little bit more detail on how it actually generates more revenue for the town, but.
Does it have to generate revenue for the town or just
No.
improving?
Economic improvement.
Economic
Yeah.
improvement, so yeah, how many people are they gonna be hiring, like, for example, how many people will they hire in Columbia? That are Columbia residents?
so I know these additions,
Exactly.
they invested a lot of.
In theory. That you
Or could it just be that, hey, it's.
Hyundai's business in our.
Yeah, it says it has to be a clear economic benefit, so. What is the economic benefit to Columbia from this?
Well, you're starting to have almost like an auto mile.
Yeah.
What's that, it used to be just Ford and used cars that
Yeah.
fly this.
Well, it does say, right, even in the question, it says briefly describe in parentheses, new retained jobs,
Yeah.
average wage for the job, like, they just put more jobs.
Right,
How many? What is the average wage per job? They could just even detail that.
right,
It's right there, the question.
yeah, the question does give them some guidance,
That's true.
Right.
so.
Market.
And the
Yeah, I don't
other,
think they're attaching any additional pages for their 7 words of, sorry, 8 words of answers.
I mean, yeah. It reminds me of work, I audit taxes and let's say I have deduction, I'm like, well, what are they? And it might work out, but just saying other isn't good enough.
yeah,
Why are, I don't wanna be really picky, but I don't really understand it, I mean. Don't people use Excel? Oh, it's, I know, it's Mary.
That's Mary,
Oh,
she does everything by hand,
Oh, no.
eventually gets to Excel. when it
It's
comes to-
almost impossible not to start checking them out. Right? But I'm not gonna check it, so that probably.
Yeah, I love it.
She does her math by hand all the time, I never do, so I'm sure she's good.
right. There's also, item number 7, they're encouraged to. Make offer positions to local residents, I mean, is there any kind of contractual? Requirement associated with that?
I know,
Cause I would think in the application, maybe it could say, and we agree that. Yeah, this. Econ development might wanna just. Bump up the application. This committee of 1, econ development, do they like?
no, they have, 4 now.
Oh, they do, good.
Yes. They're improving.
Well, I don't know, I'm thinking like an auditor, so even if they said more jobs, 8. What if it's not 8? What if it's 2? Like, do we hold them to that and re-audit them for years and say, no, you said 8 in the application, in reality it was 0 or,
Now, it starts to become,
honestly.
eroding benefits here for us too, if we don't have any way to do
To
that.
enforce it.
Right, right, we wouldn't have an enforcement mechanism, and how do we know?
Yeah.
I
The
don't
other
know,
thing is
timing
that
of
is
jobs, it could be over. Period of 3 or 4 years, if they're bumping it up, that's still good. It's just, there's a lot of, I understand what you're saying, Jim, definitely.
What do they do? What is it exactly? They took a vacant.
Yeah.
Well,
took it-
they bought Wiles Motors
Yeah,
and then they converted into Hyundai.
So it was just a dead, previously closed dealership.
They totally renovated it.
Right,
ground
and it
up.
wasn't an active dealership.
Yeah, well,
It was,
Yeah, it was, it
Used
was,
to be
it was,
Pontiac, used to be Pontiac, then it
Yeah.
went into Wild Hyundai. And so now they renovated it to be more modern and updated the garage and.
Well,
I mean, it's,
Sure.
Hyundai.
That does show they're
Yeah.
gonna stay here at least.
well, they're gonna stay here, I don't see them leaving it, Gates lives in town, so.
Not Wild anymore.
It's still in the official name this as well, but it's just Hyundai.
Yeah, if you driven by.
I mean,
you see-
I believe Gates lives in town.
Well, this is his son that runs.
Well, I know Denny, but like, I know that Gates lives in town, the father.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's new and, you know, it's good for us to think about. I don't wanna ask for more information just to make it harder.
Exactly, that's why I'm kind of like, we're gonna approve it, it's just a matter of like, I think maybe.
Set precedent for the next one.
Do you want me to make sure I have a much more polished application for the town meeting, so we don't have all these questions?
Yes.
for the Town meeting.
Definitely that.
With a more polished. From my assessor.
You want that
field.
there for the timings, you want it before the time.
Yeah, I could show you the whole presentation. Prior to setting the town meeting for a second.
And you can explain to the applicant that, you know, this is just feedback, it's meant to be constructive, not critical.
And to the, we need to know, you know, somebody needs to finish the math, apply the mill rate to the
Right.
law, so we know.
What is
Exactly.
the actual.
So I can answer those questions.
Right.
Do you want to approve it tonight and then none of that will happen? I'll make sure it doesn't go from the board of selectmen to a town meeting until
Basically, got next week.
I show you everything.
I think
Yeah,
that's,
I think
That's fine.
That's fine. It was great.
Okay, I move we approve.
Yeah.
The application. Are we doing all of them, or there's just one?
Those are just
Just
one.
one.
I was just telling the horizon.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are other people applying, they're just, this is.
We just haven't done it yet, it's the first.
All right,
so.
so I move we approve the application.
Judy made a motion to
I
provide an
second.
affirmative vote to the tax and business incentive application of WHL LLC. That's what you said, right?
Yes, that's what I'm just about to
Yeah,
say, you put the words out of my mouth. All right, good.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Great.
And that works.
Yes.
Oh, thanks.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be see.
How many transfers are
I think it's only 6. Last night there was like 15 or something.
there? Look a little thicker than that.
So there's 6 transfers totaling $37,510. The first one, is $13,000 for contingency to the lake management, marine patrol department for contracted services to cover the cost of installing a new boat launch gate system. They're going to a swipe card system versus the keys. Try to improve a few things that are down there. So,
Will there be rioting in the streets over that? It wasn't necessarily,
They want.
they want it,
they
okay.
kind of want it, it's, you know. So right now, the new system, no more deposits, you pay an annual fee and you get a card and they'll be monitoring and
And the card can be
I think it's only gonna be during certain.
taken
times.
away electronically. This
That's what I use it.
They pay the first year and then they don't pay again.
And then I think it shut down the whole.
They pay $50 for, it's non-reimbursable.
Mhm.
So if
Yeah.
you lose your rights, you're signing that you realize that the card could be disabled if you. don't
And it's
follow.
only good for the 1 year, do you have to
Right,
renew
1
it the
year.
next year?
Yeah.
And, this is gonna be done over the summer?
It's
That's why we-
going in next week.
Trying to get it all processed and done.
The pads are being poured and the conduit was pulled.
Okay.
Yesterday.
Great. Yeah, so the next one is, $3,560 from commercial insurance to the town hall telephone line. We're in the process of now moving over to leaving our old telephone company, which is at Pinnamin, going to IPG for a VoIP system. So to help sisters, they have basically, for what, the next 2 years or year, the install price has been added to their cost of the monthly bill. So this is just to cover us for
Find its own.
5 year. Well, anyway, and I think some of this is retroactive because they started working back in April or something, so. So to cover that cost to get through the month of June, we need $1,560 to cover that bill. The next one is. The IT department, transferring $1,311 to contracted services. There was some additional costs. Oh, I think it had to do with the text my gov, we had
We paid per text and went over.
they're going a little wild on texting, so we have.
That was good.
Pay more.
Jen is a texting diva.
Yep, and then.
We have been getting a lot of texts.
Yeah, so that was part of it, and then the rest is just to put some more money into the IT equipment line. We're trying to upgrade, something in the printer, we're trying to buy some more laptops. Balance of all this can get paid next year since we're moving to Microsoft
365
Microsoft 11.
Oh.
We just finished the migration
to
to
365.
SharePoint, and we're already on 365.
Oh, yeah.
We're on SharePoint, which is kind of like, everything's moved to the cloud now.
Yeah,
It's like the OneDrive and all that
right.
fun stuff, so
Yeah.
that project's done. Plus our migration to,
Got it.
anybody have noticed, we're no longer .org, we are .gov in our email. so-
Change your email to us.
Oh,
Well, I'm not shutting that down quite yet, so we're good for a while. The next, transfer is for $2,963, they're taking up us. Facilities OT lines, they didn't spend it all, so we're moving again, they had, wanted us to their telephone line. We have a new assistant facility maintenance guy, so he's getting us on spectrum. So that's new, we had that, they had to buy, as usual, with facilities, they needed additional supplies to get through all their maintenance projects. And then the final thing is, you'll see 1997, the maintenance truck needed some heavy repairs, I think it was a suspension thing or something and a few other things. So
Right.
I think tires too, so,
I said they got a good.
Tires and-
Pay for my tires
Yes.
recently.
yeah, so they took care of that. The next transfer is from salaries finance, to the tax collector's salary line. If you remember, we have hired a new assistant tax collector.
Oh.
So we're trying to cover the cost of that. There may be another transfer coming next month. I don't know if it'll come to FiPAC. It depends on the end of year salaries that got posted. So that's the clear out that line. And then again, the next one is to, that's supposed to be. I don't know, so that was, oh, got the wrong one, that's on this one. It should be, again, Marine Patrol. Finance salary lines, and extra money in there, it's going to salaries for Marine Patrol. Between last summer and this summer, there's been an increase in coverage for Marine Patrol, so we're trying to cover that. They also needed some supplies just to get started for this year, printing of their annual. Oh, it's for the boat stickers, came in higher. There are some repairs needed, I think for the boat. Just some small things that when they bought the boat, and then there's some mileage that was paid, so. That's what the transfer came out to $8,676, so these are the. Big transfers for this one.
On that second one, maybe it was just not an update, but it still says salaries tax collection. On the second one, it should does it need to be changed to say Marine Patrol?
Uh,
It did say no to follow.
Under description?
oh, and the last one, oh, yeah, I see it, yeah, that's just a, like, on the fourth. Probably.
It's just a label up there, right? But I didn't know if that should be fixed before it's formally filed, and whatever.
Yeah.
Formality.
Oh, yeah, I see it, Yep, that's just a typo, yeah, it's a typo, this should be,
Oh, I see what
it's
you're
a
saying.
typo. You know, by
It
the
says,
time you get through all these things, I get a little tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a typo, but it won't, the account number is correct.
That's, well, again, like the auditor, like, well, the other one says salaries tax questions, a different account number, my eyes are catching. It's the same description, but two account numbers.
Yeah.
I
No,
figured,
that's just a typo.
it's a new catch.
Okay, I move that we approve the transfers as submitted with the adjustment that was suggested.
Is there a second?
Our second,
Art? Are there any discussions about the transfers? Questions, comments, concerns? Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. And I believe that is the last item on the agenda. All right, motion to adjourn.
That is Art's prerogative, no one else makes me.
Very happy.
I'll second it, Judy.
Sure.
No, no, it's second.
It's turning down. Turned it. Good night, Jen.
All right, guys. Thank you, Jeff.
Bye, Jess.
All right.